Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance. Cheryl, thank you so much for sitting down with me in person. We're in Manassas. You're actually doing me a favor, meeting me a little bit halfway here. But I'm so excited to hear your story. You sound like you've had a lot of adventures throughout your life, and I'm just really thrilled to hear about that. So if I ask you, where does your story start? What does that mean to you?
I guess I would have to go back to the first time I transported my parents transported me. I grew up in Wyoming,
Okay.
which is, to some people kind of unique. Not a lot of people I wouldn't say I was born in Wyoming. And then when I was about 8 years old, we moved to Alaska, which a lot of people, once again.
Yep. Unique.
Yeah, unique. And I remember how traumatic that was for me at 8 years old. In Wyoming, I was related to everybody in the small town of about 5,000 people. I think everybody in town was my relation. And I was very used to having grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, and even friends, even at 8 years old. And so to uproot me and take me to Alaska, I knew no one, I knew nothing. And you think 8 years old, you're pretty malleable, you're pretty adaptable. My mom will tell you, I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And there's two things that were significant about that. Obviously, I for the first time I flew on an airplane.
Okay.
And this will really date me here. That's how old I am. It's in the days before we had tablets and all these things to entertain us, right? So flying from, I remember, Salt Lake to Seattle to Anchorage, we had headphones and we would plug them in, and it was so cool to listen to Japanese people speak.
Yeah.
We didn't understand a word they said, but it was just fascinating. And we had, they gave out playing cards. So you'd have, my brothers and I would play cards. And we, once in a while, had a book or a magazine or something to read. But for the most part, we were bored. And we were kids.
Yeah.
And so when the flight attendants came by and we were bored, they were trying to entertain us kind of thing. And they said, "Oh, do you want to help us get up and pick up trash?" And hey, as 8 years old, I was on an airplane. I was like, picking up trash is exciting.
Yes. I get to get out of my seat.
Yes, I know. And I feel like I'm important,
Yeah.
with these flight attendants walking up and down the aisles. And so two things that are significant about that is, one, as you and I have talked about, offline, is I've moved 45 times in my life. So this became the beginning of my journey of moving a lot and to a lot of different places, which was really exciting and challenging at the same time. But also it planted this little seed that I wanted to be a flight attendant.
Oh.
Which furthered my running around the world kind of adventures. So that's, I guess, where my story would start.
Yeah. It is an interesting place to start. Wyoming is not a place I've been, but it's on my short list of places I want to get to.
Yes.
And Alaska as well. Really living in Alaska, I feel like that's a very small group of people that can say that. How long did you live in Alaska?
I was only there 5 years, but yet I look at it as one of the most impactful experiences of my life.
Yeah, I imagine. It's such a different place. You didn't move to Florida, so
No.
Which is where I was born, and also moved around 8 years old up to Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's pretty traumatic.
yeah, I understand what you were saying about just, feeling like you were being taken away from the people that you were closest to.
Mhm.
And I had family in Florida that I was extremely close to. Now, ironically, we were moving to a place where even more family was. but
Yeah.
but growing up with that family, it was hard for sure. So on a small scale, I can relate because I wasn't being transported to somewhere where I knew no one. So what brought your family to Alaska?
As many times as I moved as a kid, people would always assume, "Oh, were you in the military?" No, wasn't in the military. But my dad did work construction, but not at this particular point in time. So he just had my uncle lived up there, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you come up here? You make good money." It's when the oil boom was on and,
Mhm.
they were building the pipeline and all that kind of stuff, although my dad did not work on the pipeline, all that. But he did work at it was one of his favorite places to work was when we lived up there. We lived in Kenai. And the good part about moving up there was everybody up there was from somewhere else.
Yeah, everyone's a transplant.
Right. So everybody's looking for friends.
Mm,
Everybody very friendly, very open. I made friends. I made friends quickly, and they became lifelong friends.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Do a lot of them still live in Alaska?
Yes, they do. I'm one of the few that does not
Okay.
still live in Alaska. And oddly enough, I moved when I was back we moved to Arizona, not back to Wyoming, when I was 12, and it was just my goal was I am going back to Alaska at some point in time. And so when I was about 33-ish, and I had become a flight attendant, but I had retired from being a flight attendant, still had benefits, and my benefits were running out. I decided I was going back to Alaska. And so I reached out to my best friend,
Mm.
and we had communicated, but not regularly, maybe Christmas cards kind of thing. And I just said, "Hey, I'm coming up there. You know of any place I can stay?" And she's like, "Oh, dumb question. You're staying with me."
Obviously.
I know. So I was like, "Okay, cool. That's cool." And I was literally only there for like 36 hours
Oh, wow.
because I was going to Seattle for something. I was living in Wyoming at that particular point in time. And so I was going back to Seattle for something else. So I thought, I'm just going to pop up to Alaska and back. And I remember I was going to get on this. I was thinking, I am so disappointed because my flight into Kenai, from Anchorage to Kenai, uh, was at 10 o'clock at night. And I was so disappointed. I was like, this is crazy. I want to be able to see outside the windows, and because Alaska's beautiful. That's one
Mhm.
of the main attractions is it's beautiful. And this was ironically on June 22nd, if you know anything about the summer solstice. And
Mhm.
yeah, right. So I get to Alaska and I get to Anchorage, and it's 9 o'clock at night, and it's still broad daylight. I get on the plane at 10 o'clock, and it's still broad daylight. So on my little plane, my little flight to Kenai, I got to see everything.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, got off the plane, and literally for like 36 hours, we just drove around, visiting all of the places I grew up and reaching out to some of my other friends. And they were all like, "Oh, yes, let's get together and eat at this pizza place that we ate at when we were younger." So to me, that was a real testament to the fact that relationships can
Mm.
endure even if you don't stay in close contact.
Yes.
They remembered me. I remembered them. Picking up was like we had never been apart.
That's wonderful. That has to feel so good
Mhm.
all those years later.
Yes.
Yeah. So you moved to Arizona after Alaska,
Mhm.
and was this just something that your family was like, "Hey, we're gonna go where the job is," or we're just not affected by moving? It's just something that we're gonna do because we can. Like, what was the draw to moving?
I didn't realize this till my dad was older and getting ready to retire, was, the grass is always greener on the other side
Sure.
kinda thing. He loved his job in Alaska. My mom wasn't really happy in Alaska for reasons we won't get into. I mean, it was a big drug culture up there. It
Okay.
was the '70s. My brothers were I was still pretty young, I was 12, but my brothers were getting into high school. She wanted to get away from that, so we went to this really small town, religious community in Arizona, right?
Big change.
Yeah. And this town was much like my town in Wyoming. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody was related. Moving to that town was like nobody wanted to make friends. I was, why would they want to be friends with me? They already had friends. And, I can't say I didn't make any friends. I made one really good friend because she was kind of in the same boat I was.
Okay.
And we've stayed friends since that time, but it was a real culture shock.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I went from this very welcoming, open, let's everybody be friends to you're a stranger, we don't care if you exist kind of thing.
Yeah. You're on the outside a little bit.
So hopefully nobody in my family's listening to this. My mom would laugh, but I remember I moved when I was in 7th grade, and I was getting ready to, we lived there 2 years. I was getting ready to go to high school. And one of the teachers from the high school came over and was like, oh, I want to welcome you. The teachers want to be real welcoming, right? And being the little brat that I was, I just looked at him. I said, I will never go to high school here. And I was right. We moved, but not because of me.
Ha-ha.
And we moved back to Wyoming.
Oh, okay. So did a nice triangle there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is that where you graduated?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did graduate from high school there. And during that time, I was totally devoted to becoming a flight attendant. Everybody, what do you want to be when you grow up? People have great aspirations to be doctors, lawyers. I said, no, I'm going to be a flight attendant. I knew nothing about being a flight attendant other than picking up trash on airplanes when I was young. But I knew I liked to travel.
Yes.
I had come to that conclusion that moving was traumatic, moving was hard, but I liked meeting different people, going to different places, different cultures, and I liked being a tourist, but I loved living in areas and really getting to know people and different, I feel very blessed because I feel like I've experienced a lot of different cultures.
Yeah.
Even within the United States, you'd
Yeah.
be shocked how many different cultures there are. And so I feel really blessed in that aspect. And I remember, like I started when I was probably 16, filling, and this, once again, date myself, had to type out all the applications, type up your cover letter, make no mistakes. No.
Yes, that's right.
White out,
Exactly.
kind of things. And so I would send in my applications, get rejected. Every 6 months, I'd do this. Every 6 months. Turned 18. Every 6 months, I would do this.
Wow.
And when I was 18, 17 actually, I graduated early from high school at 17 and moved to California on my own by myself. And continued to apply, and get rejected every 6 months. And then it was funny because I ended up moving back to Wyoming again after I think I lived in California for like a year and a half and moved back. And I didn't know that airlines, when they hired, typically only hire if you live in a city and one of their bases, where their bases are at. And why? Because if you're going to work for them, you want to,
Yeah.
This is how much research I did, right? Go figure that one. So anyway, I got back to Wyoming, and my brother was actually living in Guam. My dad was working in Guam at that time. So my brother was with my dad, and he was dating this girl that worked for Air Micronesia. And my brother, knowing how much I wanted to be a flight attendant, said, hey, she said that Air Micronesia is hiring. But Air Micronesia had gotten bought out by what used to be Continental and is now United.
Okay.
So I reached out to them. I got their address in LA, and they're like, no, we've moved our base to Houston because Houston's where Continental's at. Air Micronesia was in LA. Anyway, you don't want to get into all the logistics of this, but it is somewhat important to the story. So I reach out to Houston, and Houston's like, no, our recruiters are in Denver right now. They're not here, so you can't talk to them.
Oh.
And I was like, recruiters? Hey, I've gotten past sending in applications and getting rejections in the mail. Now I know they have recruiters and they're in Denver, and I'm in Wyoming at the time. I'm thinking, I've learned enough to know that recruiters, when they interview, they were doing interviews, obviously, and group interviews, and they do them at hotels. So my logic was, it's got to be a hotel near the airport. So what did I do? I get out the Denver phone book, this big, thick phone book. I look up every hotel that is near the airport, and I call every hotel. And shock of all shocks, after I don't know how many calls, one of them's like, yeah, they're here. Yeah. And do you want to leave a message for them? I'm like, well, of course I want to leave a message for them. Silly question. And thinking they'll never return my call. They returned my call.
Oh my goodness.
And they're like, if you can get here, this was on a Thursday. If you can get here by tomorrow at 4 p.m., you can come to our final interview.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. So I hop on a plane, I fly to Denver, and I go to the group interview, and divine intervention, providence, call it what you like. I happened to be on the shuttle bus with the recruiters going back to the airport. I was going back to fly home. They were going back to fly home. And they laughed. We were on the shuttle bus laughing and joking, and they're like, I can't believe you really came. And I'm like, I can't believe you you really returned my call.
Yeah.
And so, that's how I got hired and became a flight attendant.
So did you move to Houston after that? Okay.
I did move to Houston.
So we're at Wyoming, Alaska, California, Arizona, Texas. That's 5 so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love the tenacity of that story. I mean, truly, it is. So many of us don't know what we want at that age, which I think is completely fair.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, totally.
But if you do know what you want and you're willing to chase after it, there's nothing that says you can't get it. But, even now thinking about how much probably in some ways simpler that process would be, just because everything is online. You can find everybody online. I mean, you were digging through the phone book. You were,
going to the library, looking up United Airlines has a book in the library with all their addresses.
Oh my God. Yeah. See, I love that. I love the tenacity of that story. I think it's such a testament to your character, and probably sets up the rest of your story, which I know continues to be adventurous. So, but real quick, why did you go to California after you graduated?
That's an interesting, that story is totally, you could do a whole podcast on that. But long story short, I was from small town USA. I wanted to live in the big city.
Yeah.
I was like, the grass is always greener on the other side. I got that from my dad.
Yeah.
And my aunt lived out in California. And she's like, hey, when you graduate, if you want to come out here. She lived in Fresno, which, it's not the big city. But the good part was it was right in central California. So on weekends, I'd go to LA or San Francisco. I had friends in LA and San Francisco, and I'd go visit them, and we had a great time. And so I just wanted to experience big city life.
Yeah.
But the odd part was I was living in Fresno, and things weren't, like I said, you could do a whole podcast on my California experience. But while I was in high school, thinking I probably wouldn't get to be a flight attendant as soon as I would like, I took a ton of office classes, typing, shorthand, all those things we don't do anymore. I mean, we type on a computer, but I had to type on a typewriter, kind of thing. And I was able to, I think I was 18 by that point, secure a job as the executive secretary to the vice president of risk management in Fresno County.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I could do shorthand, and I could take shorthand very well, which is a very difficult skill, believe it or not. And that job wasn't going real well. It had its share of challenges personality-wise with the people I was working with, because there were some people there that weren't happy that an 18-year-old girl was the executive secretary.
Hey, they needed to learn shorthand is what I'm hearing.
I know, exactly. So I applied for a job in San Francisco, and I got it. And I was very good at getting jobs. Very, very good at getting jobs. It sounds like it. Yeah. Because that tenacity, that pays off in so many ways.
Yes.
But my grandparents had come out, and they wanted to go to Disney. So I went, in between jobs, I went to Disney with them. And I came back to Fresno, packed my car, was driving to San Francisco. My grandparents got to Fresno, and they were going to Sacramento and then head east to Wyoming. And don't ask me what happened. I mean, emotionally, to this day, I can't explain what happened, because I'm very adventurous, as you could tell. Yeah. And I'm not afraid to go places by myself and, tackle the world. That's, my grandma was always like, she can tackle the world. So I got to the place where I had decided I was going to live. And the family, I was going to rent from them. They had a basement apartment. And they came out to my car to help me bring my stuff in. And as I started unpacking my car, I just broke down, sobbing, crying. And I'm not a crier. I just don't cry. Dogs die. That's about the only thing that'll make me cry is when dogs die. I'm not a very
Fair.
I'm not a real emotional person. And I got in my car, packed it back up, and went to Wyoming.
Wow. Just like that.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes that's how it goes.
And for 3 weeks, I didn't come out of my bedroom.
Oh, wow. And there was nothing that you could pinpoint. It's so interesting.
Nothing.
So interesting. Clearly your body and your mind needed some sort of break from something. Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. So, ended up being good because you got to go to Denver and get your job and move to Houston. So, the big question, was being a flight attendant all you thought it would be?
Let's go back a step.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't know, I can't tell you if these two things were connected or not. Once I came out of my bedroom, went and got a job, decided I was going to go to college.
Oh, okay.
Guess what? So I went to the local community college, and I had an 8 a.m. psychology class.
Mm.
And I went to the class, and I don't know, a couple weeks in, the teacher was like, "Hey, we need somebody to read to this guy that was sitting behind me." And my thought was, "You're in college and you don't know how to read? What is wrong with you?" But it was weird because this guy that would come in every morning, sit at his desk, brought a tape recorder, turn a tape recorder on, and go to sleep.
Oh.
I was like, "Oh, so you want me to read to you because you sleep through class?" Well, come to find out this guy's blind. Okay? I didn't know it for a couple weeks. I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So he wore sunglasses. I just thought he just wanted to go to sleep in class. What could I? But I volunteered to read to him. And we ended up getting married.
Big jump.
Yeah. So I was married by the time I was a flight attendant and went to Houston.
Oh, wow. So how long here, let timeline
I know.
timeline here.
I know.
So when you moved back to Wyoming, you were
18.
18. But when you got the job with Micronesia, which was continental,
Yeah.
how old were you?
21.
21. Okay. So we've got 3 years in between. So how long were you in school?
I was only in school for probably a year no, I was 2 years.
Okay.
It was a junior college.
Okay. And you met this guy and started
Dating.
I'm sorry, it just sounds like a rom-com.
I know.
I'm
Most people don't believe my story.
I believe you.
I know.
I definitely believe you. But it's so interesting. Okay, so you meet, you volunteer to read to him, you end up dating, you end up getting married, and he moves out with you to Houston. So at that point, had you dated a lot, or was this was this a new experience for you?
No, I dated. I mean, I wouldn't say I was, the most popular girl in town, but I never really suffered from a lack of I didn't have a lot of long-term relationships.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I did have one. It wasn't a long-term relationship. I was prior to when I was a senior in high school, so this was prior to leaving, I was dating a guy, and he was a year older than me, so he went off to college, and we were supposed to get married. Well, and we were supposed to get married on my birthday, like the summer I graduated, and that would have preempted me going to California.
Mm.
But that's not why I went to California. California was totally, I wanted to do that. But he ended up getting married on my birthday to someone else.
What?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was probably the only long term.
Yeah.
And that was probably a 6-month relationship. I wouldn't say it was super long.
Yeah.
But everybody else that I dated, I just dated. Even if I did date, and I dated this guy in California for the year and a half I was out there, but I never really liked it. I mean, I wasn't in love with him.
Okay. Yeah.
We were friends.
Yeah.
I enjoyed him. He wanted to get married. I didn't. So there were people that I dated, but never, I couldn't, other than this one that I was going to get married to, never considered them really.
Serious.
Right.
Yeah, because it's interesting with somebody that likes to bounce around, has traveled, and to settle down like that, or quote unquote settle down.
Mm-hmm.
What that means for a lot of people is, right, putting down the roots and buying the house and the 2.5 kids and the white
Mm-hmm.
picket fence. And that's certainly not what it looks like for everybody,
No,
clearly. But yeah, it's just an interesting
I know.
piece of your story.
I know.
So he had no problems moving to Houston?
Yeah, he had problems moving to
Oh,
Houston.
okay.
I lived in Houston for probably 6 months before he finally came down.
Okay. Now, was his family in Wyoming?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Born and raised, never moved anywhere.
Oh, my goodness.
I lived in 2 houses, the house he was raised in and the house that he bought when he was 19.
Wow.
Yeah, total opposite. That's why his family didn't want him to move. He didn't want to move. And you can understand. I mean, when I say I married a guy that was blind, that automatically conjures up all kinds of ideas in people's minds. So let me dispel a lot of that. He was extremely adventurous in terms of, he downhill skied, he rode bicycles, he walked everywhere. He was really independent, extreme, other than just needing somebody to read to him, and he was very outgoing. I've always been more of an introvert, believe it or not. And he was the outgoing type, had lots of friends. So breaking all those ties, and his impression is if he moved, he was breaking all those ties. And I'm like, dude, man, I've lived all over the place. I have so many friends.
All over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can have friends all over. So he did finally come, and he was happy that he came.
Were you married at that point
Mhm.
and just living separately? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, people do that all the time too. So it's just trying to figure out how to do life together, right? It's
Yeah.
no different than any other couple that's
Yeah, we didn't have
trying to
kids or
figure out,
anything.
how to do life.
Mhm.
So, and what did he do?
Went to school.
Okay, so he was a student at the time
Mhm.
when you were married,
Mhm.
and you got your big break,
Mhm.
and you were like, I'm not giving this up
Mhm.
because I've wanted this since I was 8, whatever.
Mhm.
8, yeah,
Mhm.
when you took that flight.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to pick up trash on airplanes.
Yes, I know. And I got good at picking up trash on
I
airplanes,
believe
believe
it.
me. Yeah.
Oh, I believe it. So yeah, I guess, was that something that I'm sure his family struggled when
Oh,
he
yeah.
did finally move?
Oh, yeah.
Was that something that they held against you?
Yes.
That's so hard.
Very much. They loved me,
Yeah.
and then they hated me.
Hmm.
Well, first of all, I was a flight attendant, so in their words, not mine, all flight attendants are sluts.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a opinion, I guess.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, don't you know? I mean, and I will admit during the 70s and early 80s, people looked at it as, oh, you're always traveling, and because you're in all these different cities, you have a guy in every place you go, and
Oh,
it very much was a stereotype.
okay.
I will admit. So I can't say that their buying into that stereotype was completely wrong, but it was like, you clearly don't know me.
Mm.
And so this is what I would say is the most significant turning point in my life, was when I got married to him and then we moved, was because, yes, being married to a blind person had its challenges. I was very naive. I've always been very naive, willing to jump into things I know nothing about. And I'll never say that I regret marrying him, but I will say that being married to him and having kids, and that experience just totally, I wouldn't say changed who I was, but it helped me ground who I was.
Mm.
That tenacious, resilient, bouncing back from, difficult things in my life has always been there. That's never changed. But when I got married, had always been a pretty religious, person or whatever, and he was not. I mean, totally not.
Okay.
He was a partier, he drank, the reason he was blind, and he's since passed away because he was riding a bike and got hit by a semi.
Oh my God.
I know. So that's a whole, like I said, we could do podcasts on
Seriously, this is part 1.
Yeah, this is the big overview.
Yeah.
And
So he wasn't born blind.
no,
Oh,
he was
interesting.
not.
Okay.
He put a gun to his head when he was 19 and pulled the trigger.
Wow.
And he wasn't trying to commit suicide. They were playing Russian roulette because they were partying, him and his friend.
Oh my gosh.
But I came after the fact.
Yeah. You only knew him when he was blind.
Mhm.
That's actually, so when you were saying that he was so adventurous and he did all of these things, I assumed, obviously, obviously wrongly, that he did because he had been born blind, so he had, his whole life to kind of adapt. And no, he was blind at 19 and then continued to do all of these adventurous things. That's kind of wild, actually.
It is.
Yeah.
Part of that was because of his friends. His friends were like, they were like, we're going skiing this weekend. You're going with us. We're going hunting this weekend. You're going with us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And they just drug him everywhere. And, it got him out from being depressed and all the things that can come along with that. So that was the part of him that I really appreciated, respected. But it really, when I'm a deeply religious person and he's not, that creates a huge rift in my relationship. And in so many ways, it made me even more religious, even more. I got more, I don't like to use this word, dug in, but I became more dug in. And I do believe that it is my religious values and my faith that got me through the incredibly difficult life I had while we were married. And I'm not saying that's because he was blind. I'm not saying that's because he wasn't a member of the church. Those things contributed to it. But, we lived in Houston for 2 years. I had a baby and we moved to Maryland.
Okay.
And I transferred. And like I said, we could do a whole podcast on that whole thing too. But financially, it was, and when finances, there were so many times I can honestly say, if I hadn't had my parents and a really good supportive family, we would have been homeless. Because we didn't have money. We didn't have, he couldn't get a job. At this point, back to your question that I haven't answered yet, being a flight attendant wasn't everything I thought it was. I think at the time the reason I got hired and the reason they were hiring so many people at the time is because deregulation hit the airline industry in the early 80s. And so all of the regular flight attendants and all their regular people were on strike. So I was a scab, cross picket lines, which created a whole new problem. And because of that, there were so many delays and so many canceled flights. And I would leave one day and think I was coming back in 2 days and not come back for a week.
Wow.
And I don't want to say this and scare people from flying, but keep in mind, if the flight attendants and the pilots are on strike, that means your mechanics are on strike. So that means the airplanes aren't operating at, and I can't tell you how many near misses we had, like I said, that's another podcast for a whole nother day.
Yeah.
But I ended up taking early retirement because of all of the chaos and everything that was going on. And so I didn't have a job.
Was this after Houston or?
In Maryland.
In Maryland. Okay.
Yeah. When we moved to Maryland, believe it or not, prior to moving to Maryland, we had saved up quite a bit of money because I was making good money as a flight attendant. He got, Social Security disability, plus he was working a part-time job, and we didn't have kids. So, we were saving money. We'd saved quite a bit of money, saved enough money to go buy a house in Maryland. And I still remember the night before we closed, and we went to a very reputable realtor to help us buy the house, who then in turn referred us to a very reputable mortgage person, broker. What are they called? Lender. Thank you. And the night before we were supposed to close, we had preoccupied the house for reasons we won't go into right here. And we were renting it while we were waiting for the loan and everything to go through. And I had gotten really sick. I had a baby. So the baby obviously came with us to Maryland, and I was pregnant with my second one.
Oh, wow.
And so I was really sick. The first one I wasn't sick at all, but the second one I was sick all the time, really, really sick. So I couldn't fly. So I was still employed, but I couldn't fly. And the lender came to our door, knocked on our door, which is like unheard of, and said, hey, if you don't come up with X number of dollars, you can't close on the house tomorrow. And I'm like, first of all, this is weird that you're coming to my house. And, they have all your bank statements. They know everything about your life. They knew. And we had planned, here's enough money to buy the house. I wasn't going to be able to work, but we were going to have this extra money in order to get through this difficult time. And they basically said, if you don't, give us I can't remember the dollar amount, but however much money was left in my bank account, you can't close. So being young and naive, we gave them everything, which left us with nothing. Nothing. And that was the beginning of the really, really difficult challenges ahead. And I've written a little short book on this, that's when my religious faith, that's why I turned so much. I had always been that way. I always had a proclivity. That's the word I'm looking for, toward that. But it was like I just dug in deep. I was like, Heavenly Father, I need you. I cannot do this on my own. This is above and beyond. The pregnancy was really bad. She ended up in ICU when she was born. That was another whole, story in and of itself. And there were so many stories in between there of miracles, the times where I feel like divine intervention, Heavenly Father, call it what you like, stepped in to help me get through this. Well, my husband he wasn't on board with that. Glad you do that. Glad you pray. Glad, yeah, I see there's little miracles here and there, whatever. They're coincidence, call it what you like. And so that was causing a big rift in our relationship. So he's blind, can't get a job. Well, believe it or not, he did have jobs. Most of them were washing dishes. Like, how can you wash dishes in a restaurant when you're blind?
Oh.
That's why I say people have to get out of their mind the vision they have of a blind person.
Yeah.
Because he just, like I said, we could go into hours of that story, but he's making minimum wage. So it was just, we were drawing farther and farther and farther apart.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, wow, that's a lot. So your mortgage lender was taking you for a ride.
And they eventually got sued for mortgage fraud.
Oh,
they got shut down a
Okay.
couple of years later.
Yeah. So were your families helping you out at this point then?
My family was.
Your family was.
His family wouldn't help us.
Okay. Was this because they were, ever since he moved to Houston, you were persona non grata, even after you had kids and everything?
Oh, yeah. Got even worse.
Really? How come?
Well, I can't say it was totally their fault. I was pretty ornery and stubborn, and it's like, if you're going to treat me this way, I'm not going out of my way to bring the grandkids to see you. I always said, you can go take them, you can go see them.
Yeah.
But I'm not going with you. And then they got all upset, so I can't say it was all their fault, but it just and they were like, you shouldn't be a flight attendant, and you should just come back to Wyoming and live the life that we think you should live. And then if you will, maybe we'll help you, whatever. And I was like,
No.
Well,
was his family religious?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
So, and I'm assuming yours was. You were raised
My
in that way?
parents.
Yeah. Your parents were. So you moved to Maryland. You can't be working because you're so sick with your second pregnancy. After your daughter is born, is that when you take retirement?
Yeah. When she was about 18 months old, I did go back to work after she was born. We needed the money desperately. And the straw that broke the camel's back basically was, it was on a Sunday, and I was cleaning the bathroom, and I was using chemicals to clean the bathroom. So I had the door closed and the window open, and he was out mowing the lawn. Everybody's like, blind people don't mow the lawn. Well, he mows the lawn. I mean, yes, there is a fence, so he's not going to, rent it, whatever. Anyway, my oldest child, he was 2 at the time, just incredibly adventurous, whatever. Anyway, I had the door closed and locked to the outside, to the backyard, and he somehow got a chair and opened the door and let her out. And he had to be 2.5 because she was 18 months, so he was 2.5. Yeah, they're only 363 days apart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Another, thing. So anyway, he didn't know she was out there, and he ran over her foot with the lawnmower.
Oh, no.
Thank goodness. I mean, he just barely, like we say, clipped her heel, but it did detach a huge, yeah. So anyway, with all of the medical, going on and everything, the airline wasn't real accommodating, and I was just like, I can't do this. It's just too much. So I took early retirement. They were offering early retirement because they were closing. I was based out of Washington, D.C., and they were closing that base. And they said, either you move to Newark, you move to Cleveland, or we give you early retirement. I'm like, I'm not moving to Cleveland. I'm not moving to Newark.
Yeah. This is over.
Yeah.
Do you think that you would have felt the same way had the other stuff in your life not happened? Like if you had gone to Houston, still single, done, your thing as a flight attendant, even though you had crossed picket lines, I'm assuming you were relatively unaware that that's what you were doing. Yeah. Do you think you would have felt differently about the job, or do you think you always would have ended up there?
I think I could have endured the challenges of just the job itself had I not have had so many other challenges in my life. Like I said, it really was the fact that they weren't willing to work with me on my daughter because she had to have physical therapy and all these things after, the accident. So,
Yeah.
that was like, if you're not willing to work with me on this
Sure.
and give me some time off, you don't have to pay me. Just give me time off. And they were like, we can't do that. We need you at work. So I was like, no, can't do that.
Fair.
I'd probably still be a flight attendant today.
Do you think so?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see just kind of riding the waves.
It's a good job.
Yeah.
It really is.
Especially if you do like to travel. I mean, there are perks.
Well, and it's when you have a lot of seniority, like my friend who got hired in the same class I did, and she's exact same age as I am, she's still works. And you work an average of maybe 5 to 6 days out of the month. And
wow.
And you make as much as, maybe being what I would call a secretary, because I'm old, an administrative assistant kind of person. You don't get rich.
Yeah.
But, if you want to work more, if you want to work 10, 20 days out of the month, you make a lot more.
Yeah.
So.
But you seniority rules that, and you kind of get to make your own schedule. Hey, that's not a bad gig.
Yeah.
For sure. So you take your retirement. What's next for your family?
We end up moving back to Wyoming.
Okay.
Not because of his parents and what they wanted, but because after 5 years of being in Maryland and another child, we couldn't financially do it. I needed to be at home where my parents were there to help us, not only financially, but also because I had 3 little kids, all under the age of 5.
Oh, you had another one in the midst of this. Okay.
So I needed help.
Yeah.
And so we moved back. But yeah, the thing, we could continue on with my life. Ended up divorced before he ended up dying, and
okay.
Remarried and all that kind of stuff. So that's another whole story in and of itself. But that to me was the real, when I got married to him, and that we were together 15 years. That is the time that really shaped who I became.
Yeah.
It just really helped me dig deep, find out what I was all about, what did I want, what was most important to me. And I never thought that, I always wanted to be a flight attendant. I always wanted to travel, go all these places. And yet the thing that I found the most satisfying was having a family and my kids. I loved being a mom. I loved when they were young. I loved raising. I mean, everybody's like, oh, you have these little kids and, you're home with them all day. And don't you get tired of that? I had a neighbor across the street when we lived in Maryland, and I just had 2. And literally at 5 o'clock when her husband would come home, she'd come over to my house and be like, okay, let's go get coffee because, I've been home with 2 kids all day and I can't deal with it. And I'm like, okay, but I have 2 little kids at home.
Yeah.
And I have a husband that's either at school doing homework or working. So he's gone all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm raising these kids by myself. And I don't feel that way. I loved it. I loved being home. And, for her sake, we would go, and I had a girl up the street that loved to babysit. So she'd come babysit for an hour or so. And, there were many women that I associated with that were like, oh, this being a mom is just, and I'm just like, and they're like, don't you feel that way? And I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I love it. I just totally, it was the most taxing, tiring job that I loved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I woke up every morning at 7 a.m. wide awake, ready to, be a mom.
Yeah.
And I liked spending time with them. We drove around the state of Wyoming a lot. And I can say this now because they can't arrest me anymore. But we had a minivan, and we took the seats out in the back, and they were not in car seats. And they would get their blankets, and they loved audiobooks, and they would listen, and I would drive, and they would just, have their toys in the back and play. And thank goodness nothing ever happened. But then I was in Wyoming where, they didn't have such strict seatbelt and car seat laws, but
yeah. I mean, who among us has not made a bed out of the back seat on a road trip? So
yeah.
Let him cast the first stone. So I love that in the last thing that you said. What I love about your story is that you were able to change your mind, and you didn't get hung up on the fact that, at least long term, you may have in the moments, but that you had been working so long for one thing and it didn't end up being the thing that you thought it would be, or even just fitting into your life the way that you thought it would. And your ability to pivot and not crucify yourself for changing your mind and for wanting something different. I think it's such an important part of growth, and I think it's something that we aren't always good at, especially when we're young, because we think that the way that people look at us is going to change, and I can very personally speak to this.
Mhm.
So I just think it's really important, a really important part of your story to say that, this is what I thought I wanted for my life, and I did it, and it was fine. It wasn't like super awful all the time or anything. There were parts of it that I liked, but then I became a mom and had a family, and even though that's not what I stated I wanted when I was 8 years old, it ended up being the best thing about my life, and I was able to pivot and lean into that. And I think that is just such a beautiful expression of the fact that we are capable of so much, we're capable of change, and change is necessary at different points in our lives. And if we choose to lean into that instead of sticking by something that we've stated in the past just because we don't want to be seen as flighty or as somebody that is wishy-washy or changes their mind a lot, we are able to experience more fully our lives and actually enjoy the pieces of our lives that as they're happening instead of looking back with regret.
And that's a question, like I said, a lot of people have asked me, do you regret marrying this blind person? Because it brought with it all this baggage and created so many years of just chaos and just absolute 15 years of just, I literally, I do have PTSD.
Yeah,
from
I
all of
believe
that.
it.
And I think the most important thing that you said, it just made me think of this demo reel that I put together, a short little video kind of introducing myself, is what I got out of all of that was that learning is at the core, the most important thing. But learning isn't about acquiring information. Learning is about transformation. And as I have learned from so many experiences in my life, I have transformed into a person I never thought I wanted to be, but I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I'm happy being the person I am, and just allowing myself to evolve and grow in so many ways has been, to me, the most profound experience of my life.
Yeah.
There's so many people that I've come across in all of my experiences in travel that just hang on, like you said, to, whatever it is I wanted, whatever it is I thought, life was going to be, and
Mhm.
it didn't give me what I wanted. Instead, just saying, hey,
Yeah.
let life give you whatever it is. And let the learning experiences that you have, my favorite saying is, people, when you fail, we're not gonna call it failure anymore, we're gonna call it learning experiences, which I think is interesting in and of itself. It's the transformation that comes out of those learning experiences
Yeah.
that really makes the difference in our life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I kind of have not a completely opposite experience to you, but
Mhm.
I in that I grew up since I was a kid wanting to be a mom. Like, that was
Oh.
something that I really, really wanted with my life. Any, decision around what I wanted to do as a career was centered around the fact that I wanted to be a mom, so it had to fit into that. Like, that there was a certain point in my life when I was a teenager where I wanted to be a chef and I wanted to go to culinary
Mhm.
school, and then I found out the hours that chefs worked, and I was like, "Never mind, I can't be a chef because I wanna be a mom, like, and I wanna be a present mom," whatever, and,
Well,
I was
let
I was a teenager, and I do recognize that there are chefs that are moms,
I
so
know, I know. Well, hold that thought for 1 second. I think that is so beautiful because so many people in the world today are like, being a mom is just, "Okay, I'm gonna go live my life, I'm gonna have all these and then I'm gonna become a mom," because it's like the consolation prize.
Yeah, or a prison sentence.
I know, and I'm
Yeah.
like, to hear somebody say that just makes me so happy.
Yeah, well, so, I'm not a mom, just
Oh.
full disclosure.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, 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 but truly, I mean, I think that motherhood is a beautiful thing, and
Mhm.
I have no less admiration for it. I ended up getting married, and the marriage was not good from the start. He was abusive, and that's my kind of transformation
Mhm.
story. But I left before we had kids, and I'm grateful that I did, because that
For
comes
sure.
with its own
Mhm.
complications. But I have spent I'm now in my, mid-30s, and
Mhm.
I don't necessarily want to be a mom anymore. And it's not anything that I've now just said I dislike motherhood, or I don't want
Yeah.
that anymore. But I do think that, God allows our heart's desires to change
Mhm. I agree.
over time. And there was a lot of trauma around that, being in that marriage and children with me just
Mhm.
personally.
Yes.
And so I struggled for a long time after I got out of that, like, I still wanted to be a mom, and then I didn't, and then I struggled with the fact that I didn't want to, and,
Yay.
how I could change so much,
Mhm.
from something, and what that meant for me, and, like, was I broken because now I didn't want that anymore. But I'll tell you, I'm an aunt, and it is my absolute favorite thing. I love being an aunt. I love my nieces and my nephew, and it is just such a joy to be in a different position
Mhm.
that is parent adjacent, right?
Yes.
I'm not their parent, but I still care for them and love them in a very special capacity and a special role. And so it is really interesting to have something that you want so much, and it's just because you're young doesn't mean that desire isn't real and isn't, visceral. It matters. But when and if that changes, that's also okay, right?
It is, and I also like the fact that you said, you felt like you wondered if you were broken.
Mhm.
There's so many times in my life where I felt like I am broken.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a lot of ways, I was broken. I was broke. Life broke me in a lot of ways. But that's not broken. And it's hard on Sundays when I go to church and it's Mother's Day, and they really shy away from celebrating mothers anymore because, and I understand there's some women in the congregation who may not be able to be mothers,
Mhm.
who really want that, and it's really heart-wrenching for them to hear other people get up there and say, "Oh, I love being a mother," kind of thing, and if I had a wish for people in your situation, and I'm so glad to hear you embrace that, I can't tell you how many aunts or whatever had such a profound impact on my life, and who were there when I was fighting with my mom or things weren't going well, and they were able to step in and just say, "Hey, you're okay," and be my mom when I didn't want my mom. My mom wasn't my mom, didn't want to be a mom. It's just I didn't want a mom at the time. Like,
Sure.
get away.
Yeah.
I'm a teenager, kind of thing. And so I just think there's so many different ways to be a mom. I don't think we need to limit the vision of motherhood to somebody who births children.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. It's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I think I do agree too. We in certain ways we've gotten away from community
Yes.
in raising families and children, and we've made ourselves very insular. And this is our nuclear family, and that's where it begins and ends. And I understand why that has happened in certain respects, but I think that when we allow community to be a part of that, it just becomes a richer experience. So, and again, take that with a grain of salt. I'm somebody that doesn't that's doing it from the outside. So,
No, I think we've gotten away from multi-generational families living in the same household. And people like me who move all over the place, it's hard. But what did I do when things got really rough? I moved back to where I could have family and community.
Yeah.
And although we didn't necessarily all live in the same household, we lived in the same small little town in Wyoming.
Sure.
And it wasn't just my mom and dad. It was my friends. It was my parents' friends.
Yeah.
So many people. And I think you're right. I think community is just very important. And we've gotten so far away from it that it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Life is harder than it needs to be because we don't have the support systems in place that we used to have.
Yeah, very much. It's become so convenient in certain ways, but it's made us distant in others, for sure. And none of us are immune, right?
No.
I mean, I find myself falling into the same traps. So even wanting something different or acknowledging that there is a different option or a different way out there, because it has to be an intentional, conscious effort to move down that path, especially at this point. I mean, it's almost like I kind of think of it as like when you were in high school, when I was in high school.
Different world.
I know. No. Just
I have a daughter your age.
Oh, do
2
you?
of them. So
More so just because of the moving.
Yeah.
But it was so easy to have friends, right? Like they're built into your schedule. They show up at the same place. I had friends in high school who were some of my best friends that I didn't see outside of school, but they were some of my best friends because I spent 5 days a week with them, right? And so then you graduate high school and you're like, oh my gosh, what is community? How do I do this? Because I have to now plan for it.
Yes.
I have to figure it
I
out.
have to reach out.
Yeah.
Make an effort.
Exactly.
Work.
And juggle all of these other things. And so, yeah, it's definitely, especially with us being so much more spread out and technology getting more and more advanced and there being good aspects of that, I think one of the biggest downfalls is that we just keep moving in towards ourselves more and more. And I don't know, it's hard, but I feel like anybody that has community or is involved in community can speak to having that and the value that it brings to your life.
Yes.
Yeah. And I feel sad for anybody that hasn't had that in their life.
I agree. And like I said earlier, had I not have had my family, I would not be where I'm at today. They are the reason. Not just financially helping me, not just logistically helping me with kids, but the values they taught me, the things that, they passed on to me. It's just really interesting. And on a totally different side note, this is just briefly, I'll say this, is I've gotten into family history in the last 2 months, like 3 months.
Okay.
And my mom has always done family history work and just been rabid family history work. And she's always like, oh, that's good. I'm like, oh, no, boring names, dates, people, who cares? And as I've gone through on Ancestry, I've been on Ancestry, and there's so many stories that people have uploaded, and I'm reading these stories, and I'm reading all about this. And my husband one day was reading some stories, and they're like, yeah, that sounds like you. Must be where you got it from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think these things, I do think there must be something to, genetically passing things down, but I think it's just also,
Yeah.
their life experiences just got passed down through time.
I believe it. 100%. I absolutely believe it.
Yeah.
There's so much power in our stories and our experiences. And I do believe that gets passed down. And I know there's a whole field of science that's dedicated to that. So, there certainly is something to that for sure.
Yeah.
And it's pretty neat.
It is. And that's why your podcast is wonderful. Sharing people's stories.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. I think, I just think there's so much. I was actually so we're in Manassas, so I was in the Manassas Museum yesterday, and I was reading the Native American history in the area and stuff, and they did these like history, fun history facts or whatever, and it's something you kind of know, but until you see it in writing, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, that's actually a really big deal. And they, were saying that there's not a written language for the Native American languages, and so everything is passed down orally. And you think about, for so many years, literacy is fairly modern, right?
Is.
So for so many years we just did this orally, and I think there is so much power in speaking our stories out loud and recording them for posterity.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that there might be some of my posterity. It's funny because I've written 2 little books, and in the 2 little books I've written, they relate a lot of these stories and go into more details. And I laugh because every once in a while my kids will pick it up and read it, and they're like, I don't remember that. I'm like, how can you not remember that? You were the center stage. You were part of the story. You don't remember getting your heel run over by a lawnmower when you were 18 months old? She goes, I remember you telling me about it.
Yeah. But true. I mean, there's so much of our history that gets lost to time. And I think that's part of just being in a big world. But there is so much that we can do, I think, especially in this day and age, when it's never been easier to tell our stories.
And we don't.
And we don't. Yeah. So.
Why?
I don't know. Because we are still obsessed with stories. Everything is a story. I mean, you can really break down almost anything in human life and it's a story, but we don't tell each other our own stories. So
I know.
So that's what this is.
We have to change that.
We do have to change it.
So thank you for letting me come share my story.
Oh, thank you for doing it. So we covered like a handful of times, but you moved 45 times, right? In 8 states. And again, you said sometimes it was across the street, but still, to pick up and move, it is no small. I've done it a handful of times. It's not a fun experience.
It's not.
So why did you move so many times? Do you have like something that you can pinpoint to say, in your adult life? I know you didn't have control over it when you were a child.
A lot of it was driven economically.
Yeah.
We need to move to a cheaper place. And it was like we'd find a place to live. And it was like, okay, but now we found a cheaper place to live, not realizing it costs money to move every time. Go figure. And being married to a blind person did contribute to that, because if he got any kind of an opportunity for anything, we jumped on it.
Okay.
And in the process, sometimes lost houses and, ended up filing bankruptcy more than most people have in their life, but it was like, oh, there's an opportunity for a blind person. You got to take it.
Yeah.
So we would do that. So a lot of it was driven by that. And I just, even to this day, and my current husband, who also grew up in one house,
okay,
and lived in one town his whole life until he met me. I've hit all 50 states.
Good for you.
Just, and I think he has to, just by virtue of the fact that he's with me.
I love that. Yes. Do it.
Yes.
Chase it.
Yeah.
I think I've done more countries than states, which is kind of shameful, but I'm working on my states. So
No, seriously. I see, I'm the opposite. I've hit countries, but not that. Compared to world travelers, I'm like way far behind the curve there.
But like you said before, with Alaska, the beauty of Alaska is what the draw is. There's so much of North America. I mean, our nature is the biggest draw.
Diverse.
Yeah, it's so diverse. And, you see pictures and you're like, I can't believe that exists. And it's here. Like, we can go.
But let me tell you, and you've experienced this. Like, I went to Rome. My daughter convinced me to go to Rome. I'm like, I don't want to go to Rome. And I love history. You'd think I wrote it.
Yeah.
I was like, when I would see these, I was just like, wow. And then I took pictures and I took them home and look at this. And I'm like, that's not at all what it was like. No, and every place we've been, and we take pictures and we come home and the pictures mean something to us because we can remember the feelings, we remember the experience, but the pictures just don't do it justice.
Not at all.
I don't care how good of a photographer you are. And it doesn't embed in you the feeling and the culture. And we always try, even though we try to avoid being tourists all the time, to get into the talk. If we go into a restaurant, we talk to people.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert, 100% introvert, but yet I love talking to people from different places and their experiences and their stories.
Yep.
And side note, very interesting, as a flight attendant, one thing I learned, I could, without even looking at the schedule or, whatever it was, that we were going someplace, I could always tell where we were going by because we used to serve food back in the day, what food was boarded and what drinks were boarded.
Interesting.
Yes. If Pepsi and Coke, very distinct, 7-Up, Sprite, could always tell where we were going.
Wow.
And tomato juice. Tomato juice was another big one.
That is a big one for randomly, and not for Bloody Marys, like just tomato juice.
Just tomato juice. Yeah.
It's very interesting. So you, with your husband now, you have 3 kids?
4
kids. Oh my goodness.
Had another one in Wyoming.
Okay.
All 4 of my kids were born in different
places. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's kind of cool.
4
kids, and this your husband now is the person that you married after your first husband. You were divorced. So how has that changed things for you in terms of your first husband unintentionally brought a lot of chaos to your life?
Yeah.
Right?
I don't blame him at all.
So, and that was your first experience of marriage and of motherhood and of all of the things.
Yes.
So, you really walked in as a young adult into a lot of chaos. How did that change for you when you met your current husband? Did it change for you? Is he also a lot of chaos?
No. No. At first it was, and that's because we could do another whole podcast just on this story. Toward the end of my relationship with my first husband, he got to where he did get more dependent on me all the time because I drove him places and he just, instead of being that adventurous, outgoing kind of person, and I think a lot of that, there is a lot of depression and bipolar that runs in his family, and we knew nothing about that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And I think that contributed a lot to a lot of the chaos in our life. And he just kept getting more and more depressed. And as he got more and more depressed, things got even more and more challenging. And we started a business, and the business was taking off, blah, blah, long story. Anyway, he started early on in our relationship when we were living in Maryland. We got in a great big fight, and I was kind of a mouthy person, and I will admit I was provoking it. I was saying things that weren't very nice. And so we were in the basement, and he literally picked me up and threw me up the stairs.
Oh.
Which cracked a vertebrae in my neck.
Oh, my.
I know. And I told him at that point in time, he wasn't an abusive person. I told him, if you ever do anything even remotely similar to that again, I don't care if I provoke you or whatever, we're done. I don't think he believed me, because that's what ended our relationship. Was things were not going great in our relationship. Things were really difficult and challenging. It was probably the hardest point in our relationship after 15 years of being together. And it was on a Saturday morning. The kids were going to a birthday party. I'll make it short. And they were walking down the street to a birthday party. And as soon as they left, he lit into me and started provoking me. And I was like, we've thought about this so many times. We're not going to fight about it anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. And I think he took that to mean I'm done with the relationship. I just meant I'm done with this conversation. And so he picked me up, threw me up against the wall, then threw me on the bed, put a pillow over my face, and just started, hurting me. And now this gets deeply spiritual. So for those of you who don't believe in God and have faith, you can just discount it or whatever you want to say. 3 of them my one son was in Wyoming with my parents, and the 3 younger ones had gone, and they came back. They hadn't got to the birthday party. They had come back, and they saw what was happening, and they were at the foot of the bed, and they were crying and screaming and begging him to stop. And I was begging them to call 911. They were scared. They wouldn't do it. But finally, I think because of the begging of the kids, he finally let up, and he got up, and I called 911, and he got arrested. And I was like, I told you, you ever do anything like that again, we're done.
Yeah.
And now I meant I was done.
Yeah.
And that's what ended the relationship. And it got really, really chaotic after that. Because we own this business, my now husband was working for us. And that's how I kind of met him. But then he walked into this chaos. And after that, there was all kinds of chaos in the divorce that we didn't have a lot anyway. But my one daughter, I asked my kids, I'm like, why did you come back? And my youngest daughter, she said to me, she says, well, Jesus came and told me we needed to go home.
Wow.
And I was like, okay.
And that her sisters listened to the youngest.
Mm-hmm. Well, she wasn't, she was the middle of the 3.
Oh, okay.
But she was, yeah.
Wow.
I know. And so then by this point, I'm 38 and have 4 kids. And this guy that's working for us is 25. And he's trying as best he can to help me keep the business together, because that's my only source of income, because my other Social Security disability just walked out the door.
Yeah.
Because I pushed him out the door, mind you, but it was chaos. We were living in hotels. We were going from here. It was just insane. And he was trying, and I'm sure it's because of all that was going on at that time that's how the friendship that we had was forged. But so I end up, as a 38-year-old woman with 4 kids, end up marrying a guy that's 25 and was the real job he had full time, because he was helping us part time. He was making $8 an hour.
Oh, wow. Oh my. That's a story in and of itself.
I know. But over time, we've been married 25 years now, and all my kids are grown and gone. It went from extremely chaotic slowly over time to settling down. And he's got a really good job now. And he's not a lawyer. He works in cybersecurity, and he works for a big law firm, makes good money.
Good for him.
Takes care of me.
That's where to be right now. My goodness.
He was a good dad to the kids.
That's great.
So.
Yeah. Because when did your ex pass?
It wasn't, we had been married 8, 9 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your kids were still kids.
Yeah, they were all. Well, my older 2 were 21, 20, 18, and then the other one I think was 14.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, that in and of itself is a lot to...
And even though they had difficult feelings about their dad, he's still their dad.
Absolutely.
And it was a very traumatic death.
Yeah. Yeah. Life is complicated.
It is.
Yeah. But you do the best you can. So it's really great. So do you continue to travel a lot?
No.
Okay.
We have too many dogs.
It's a good reason.
We have outdoor cats that are hard for other people to feed. We live on 8 acres of property.
Nice.
Yeah, except that, at this stage of your life, it's not a good idea to buy property that needs a whole lot of work.
Do any of your kids live around you?
Nope.
Okay.
They all refuse because it's like, you'll just put us to work, Mom. But they come visit.
That's good.
Yeah. So, yeah. And we love our property. We love being out in the middle of nowhere. We really enjoy it, but it really does tie us down immensely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you feel like you got to do the things that you wanted to do, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I've had a very satisfying, fulfilled life.
Yeah.
I feel like the learning process that I've been through is very transformational. And even, like I said, we don't have time to go into all of it, but my new relationship, 25 years we've been together, has brought a whole new set of challenges, but far more blessings than challenges. And we have a great relationship. And
it's awesome.
So,
yeah. It's all of it is seasons, right? I mean, most things don't last forever anyway.
Right.
So enjoy the season that you're in, right?
Exactly.
So I do have a question that I ask everyone at the end of each episode, which is, through the lens of your experiences, what does compassion mean to you?
You know Brené Brown?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows Brené Brown. Okay, I'll change the word from compassion to empathy.
Sure.
And what she has this little tiny animated video that I think is so cute. I mean, I've heard her speak. I've been to conferences where she's spoken, and I love Brené Brown. She's one of my favorite. And, this person's walking along, falls in a hole, right? And the person that's with them goes, "Oh, you fell in the hole." And they're like, "Oh, let me go get help," And they get a ladder or whatever, and they put it down there, and they're like, "In the interim, I'm going to throw food down to you, whatever you need to get out of this hole that you're in your life," right? And she says, what's the other word? Not empathy, sympathy. Sympathy is standing at the top of the hole, putting stuff down there, to help them, whatever. Empathy is crawling down in the hole with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And staying there until help comes. And I think that's what compassion is to me. It's getting down in the hole with people. It's not just saying, "Here, what can I do to help you?
Mm-hmm.
How can I alleviate some of the symptoms of what's going on in your life?" And the people that I feel like have helped me the most are those that are willing to get down in the hole with me.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's important. I mean, because that looks different for different situations and different people. But if we can do that for other people, I think it has the capacity to change someone's life, but it also has the capacity to change communities and change the world.
It does. One person at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Well,
the parts of your story, I feel like we, could come back and do this again a few times.
Yeah. Too many times. They might get sick of me.
Yeah. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. Some people, it feels like they've lived like 3 or 4 lives, and I think you may be one of them.
Yes.
So. But, I think that regardless of what our specific experiences are, we can always relate to each other through stories. So I think it's important that we keep telling them, and I appreciate you committing to telling yours.
Oh, well, I appreciate you taking the time to build a podcast where people can share their stories.
Thank you. And we'll link to you in the show notes. Your books we can link to in the show notes. So anything you want to share, and people can connect with you from there if they would like.
Yeah.
All right.
My goal is building community, so that seems to be
perfect.
That seems to align with what we've talked about and what you seem to be doing.
Exactly. I love it. Build that community on your 8 acres, and it's never been easier or harder to do, I think.
Yes.
So, thank you for listening to The Human Experience. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours. So be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.